in Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa.
Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh.
Ramit, it's great to have you with us today. We're going to be talking about the documentary recently released. Is documentary the right word, Benji, for Toxification?
Yeah.
And we're going to be discussing the ins and outs and basically how difficult it was and all the ups and downs and the whole process of what it took to get a documentary from the early stages through to where it is now, which is Amazon Prime. I think is one of the first purely Sikh-based documentaries we've ever had on such a high platform, independently made, and it's not only that, I've seen it, and it's to such a good standard, and it's something that the whole community is very proud of that work, because as we've been out here in the diaspora, we've got a lot of highly educated Sikhs, and we want to see good quality, and we want to see good content, and I think your documentary definitely had both. So please tell us a little bit about yourself, how old you are, when did you start this?
Waheguru. Okay, so firstly, thank you so much for inviting me onto this platform. I've been listening to the podcast. I've been like one of your day one listeners, so really, really happy to be here. So in terms of me, my name is Ramit Kaur. I am now 30 years old. And when we began Toxification, I think I was 23. So it's been a long time coming. In terms of my background, so I studied a degree in photography. So I graduated in 2011. And since then, I have been exploring different kind of visual mediums for expressing my views and trying to raise awareness of different issues that are going on kind of all over the world, but mostly issues that concern kind of me and my heritage and my culture. I kind of wear lots of different hats. So I'm also a yoga teacher. And so I do a lot of work with mindfulness and meditation. And so I'm kind of slowly bringing that more and more into my practice. So making filmmaking a more mindful, conscious act, and understanding the kind of ramifications and the responsibilities of being a documentary filmmaker, which are really, really huge. So yeah, lots of different things, but bringing them together somehow.
And I know this is produced by yourself, you're the filmmaker behind this, but is this the first documentary that you've been involved in? Have you been involved in any others where you necessarily wasn't the filmmaker, but you had a role in there? Or is this the first one that you've been involved in at all?
Yeah, so this is my first feature documentary, so full-length documentary. I've made a number of short films. I had a short film which was commissioned by the Arts Council and BBC. That's currently on iPlayer. It's called Terra Firma. But that's also a short film. So this is my first full-length film, and yeah, I mean it's been a journey for sure.
So you said you started when you're 23, 7 years ago. So if you don't mind me asking, what took so long?
Yeah, I mean, lots and lots of things. So if I just talk you through what's happened in those 7 years. So beginning of 2014, myself and my colleague Leva Questani, we studied together. So she studied film production while I studied photography, and we became good friends while we were studying at the Arts University in Bournemouth. We decided to make this documentary. And so we began the kind of research phase of pre-production. That continued for about 6 to 9 months. We then flew out to India in October. So we were actually both on our kind of, we both love traveling. So we were both backpacking in different kind of routes. And so both of our routes were going into India. So we had decided that that's what we would do.
October, what year, sorry?
October 2014.
And did you just go to the Punjab, or did you go to the south? Did you travel around, or was it just Punjab that you traveled to?
So my trip was a 6-month trip, starting in Nepal and ending in, I believe, Cambodia. So yeah, I was there for 6 months, but Leva has been traveling from 2011 until a couple of years ago. So she's like, that's kind of very much her life. She sold all of her belongings after uni and went traveling. So yeah, we were both on kind of long-term trips. We both obviously didn't have a lot of camera kit on us. So it was really, really like literally the basic camera equipment, the most basic camera equipment. And so, yeah, so 2014, October, we were in Punjab. So we were there for a month. And we were really lucky to kind of live a village life. And we lived in the Bind for that month. And we kind of traveled around. Most of our filming was in Sangrur. But we also did some filming in Amritsar and Anandpur Sahib.
Okay.
So that filming took a month. And the initial plan, so while we were in the research phase, we had actually decided to make a 5-minute short film, which looking back is actually quite laughable, but that had been the plan. And so our entire research process was based around making a 5-minute film, and maybe it would stretch to 10 minutes. And while we were filming for this month, we were realizing that it might be a bit longer. So we'd do an interview, and obviously the person would ask, how long is the film going to be? And we'd say, oh, maybe it's going to be 15 minutes. And then, the next person would ask, and we'd say 20 minutes. And then it became half an hour. And then there was a point where we were like, we actually don't know. We have no clue now. So it was completely unplanned. And then we continued our travels, and we met up again in London, probably about 9 months to a year later. So this would have been 2015. And that's when we started editing. And so we spent about 3 months editing intensively. So we took 3 months off work, and we were editing every day. And that was a much longer process than we imagined, a much longer process than it would be for a 5-minute film, which is what we had planned for. And then after those 3 months, we kind of had to get back to work and get back to our normal lives. So we began just editing on like evenings and weekends, and we did that for another couple of years. After that, we ran a crowdfunding campaign, because so everything that we had done up until that point had been done by Leva or myself or our colleague Nahayan. So it was a really, really small team of 3, and we had volunteered all of our time and everything. We'd kind of covered all the costs and things like that. We realized that we needed to pay for sound design and a soundtrack, because those were things that we weren't able to do in-house. So we crowdfunded for that. And then we began the process of getting the soundtrack done, all of that kind of thing. And then after that, I think that's when production really slowed down, because that was the time when I began emailing people and trying to contact people and trying to get it out there on a mainstream platform. That was always my dream.
So what year? What year was it made?
So we probably completed it in about 2017. So it's taken a long time to get it onto a mainstream platform.
Okay, so I didn't realize, the process is quite long. So from 2017 completion to having it on our Amazon screens today is taken 4 years. Is that normal, or is that because it needs to gain momentum, popularity? What is the process of producing it and then getting it onto a high platform like Amazon? Do you contact them? Do they contact you?
Mm-hmm. So I don't think it's normal, because I think that people who go out to make a feature film usually have a team behind them, or they have some kind of infrastructure for the post-production. And we literally, like, no exaggeration, we plan to make a 5-minute short film. And I mean, it's been such an amazing journey, but it's been incredibly long. And there have been a lot of, a lot of no's, and a lot of emailing and knocking on doors, and a lot of, this isn't relevant, or you've missed the boat, or this is not an issue, or this is not a big enough issue. So yeah, it's been quite a challenging journey, I think, for me, because I've been really championing this film, and it's been really important to me that it is on a mainstream platform. I'm so happy to see that it's available to be watched by the masses, and not just by our community, that's like massive for me. But yeah,
I mean, we're all so proud of yourself and just somebody in our community getting it on a platform. And you're telling me about the challenges and about the hardships and the no's that you endured. And I mean, everyone at some point in their life, I'm sure of this, has started a project. I know I have, and then thought, you know what, this is going to be too difficult, and then abandon the project, so to speak. Whether it's a small one, whether it's a big one, they've looked at it and they've thought, no, this is going to be too difficult for me. And doing this over the space of 7 years on a voluntary basis, juggling it with work, with family life, with everything else, like I said, on a voluntary basis, and getting all those no's, those rejections and all that negativity, how did you and what made you persevere to get it to where it is today?
The biggest thing is I felt a huge responsibility. Even like going out there and making the film, the reason why I did it was because I felt that as a Punjabi, it was my responsibility to bring the news of the suicides that I was, reading about in the news, to bring that to my friends and family. That was my kind of driving force. And then once it was made, I knew that it was powerful. And I mean, like, even my own parents and, family members would say, I think you should probably give up on this now because it's clearly not going to go anywhere. And obviously they meant well, but it's been such an interesting journey for sure.
Yeah,
but
so much character, because there's a lot of days where you probably did want to just throw in the towel and think, this isn't the way. But like I said earlier, it's amazing that you've got it this far.
I was just going to say, like, I know you said, like, it has taken a lot of time, but it couldn't have come at a better time as well. So I know you said you're into your spirituality and your yoga and stuff, and thinking about everything happens at the right time for the right reason.
Yes.
Especially with everything that's happening in Delhi right now. You know what I mean? There's no better opportunity for people to learn about what's happening to us and why we are taken to the streets of Delhi. You know what I mean? So I think with like everything's felt right. Everything's felt. You know what I mean? The right time.
Yeah. I'm such an impatient person, and I can now see why it took this long, and now I can look back and say, now I realise what the plan was. But at the time, it's been really frustrating at times.
We're going to get into the whole Ghassan issue shortly, but we've seen from recently tweets from or social media from Rihanna and Greta, who are females, talking about, from a external point of view, fair to say, talking about what's happening, and yourself talking about it from an internal point of view and being there on the ground. Did you face any risks, any threats? Did you ever feel unsafe whilst doing this?
I mean, as a woman, I think it's not often that it's a positive thing to be a woman in this world. But for sure, like during filming, I really noticed how it can be a positive thing to be a woman in terms of like interviews and things. When you watch the film, you'll see how the farmers were just so willing to open up to us and to share some really challenging moments with us. And so I think for me, that is testament to the kind of power of being a woman and being a natural kind of listener and someone who is naturally open to conversations like that. So in that sense, it was really powerful being two young women out there kind of on our own. I do remember moments, I mean, because I've done a lot of backpacking and a lot of travel on my own, I've been in a number of kind of situations that I look back on and think, wow, I can't believe I did that. But yeah, I mean, I remember points where we would take lifts from strangers into different bins and all sorts of things, and it was trust. And Leva is much better at that than me, because she had done it for so much longer than me, and she was just kind of like, oh, this guy has offered to give us a lift into Tarantar and let's just go with him. And I would be like, huh? And she was like, no, it's fine. So that's a learning as well. It's about trust. And what I learned was that you know, you can rely on people. And even like before we were filming, during the pre-production phase, I was obviously, Leva is her kind of background is that she's Kurdish, and so she has no connection with Punjab or Punjabi or anything like that. And so during pre-production, we had spoken and kind of given each other tasks to do, and she had said, well, you're Punjabi, why don't you contact a Punjabi farmer? And I had said, yeah, okay, I'll do that. And I got off the phone and I was like, how do I do that? Because my family, I have no family in Punjab. I have no friends in Punjab. I do now because I've kept in touch with the farmers. But at the time I had no one in Punjab, and I thought, oh my God, how do I get in touch with a farmer? I literally had no clue. And I went onto Facebook and I found this Facebook group called Farmers of Punjab, and I joined it, and all the messages and all the comments in it were in Punjabi, and I thought, oh well, I can't. My Punjabi is really, well, it's non-existent essentially. So I thought, I can't type in Punjabi, let alone speak in Punjabi. So
that, just to clarify, what my question basically, you kind of half answered it, is could you speak Punjabi? Could you understand it? Could you read it? Could you write it? And
Benji, my question was, so like you said, I think you answered it. Do you still keep in touch with these farmers? Have they seen the documentary? What did they think about it?
Yeah, so in terms of the farmers, I'm still in touch with some of them. So I met with Gurpratap Singh in January last year. That was the last time I was in Punjab. And we had a screening at the Hermitage.
Oh, okay.
Some of the farmers who are like the small scale farmers, I haven't been able to meet or speak to because they don't have phones and things like that. But yeah, I mean, there are ways for me to kind of get in touch with them and send messages to them via other people. In terms of my understanding of Punjabi, I am what many people call a coconut, so brown on the outside, white on the inside. Although I went to Punjabi class, I can read and write Punjabi. I never spoke it, and we never spoke it at home. And my parents only ever spoke it when they were having an adult conversation that they didn't want me and my brother to understand. So yeah, my knowledge and understanding of Punjabi is a little bit more now, but at the time when we went out there, it was like next to nothing. And so just to continue this story, so I posted on this Facebook group, and in English, not in Punjabi, just in English. And I literally a few seconds later got a phone call from an Indian number, and I answered it, and it was a farmer. And he was kind of like one of the more well-off farmers, so he could speak English fine and all of that kind of thing. And he said, thank you so much for making this documentary. Come and stay with me and I will sort out everything. And that was a leap of faith, because we literally got someone to drive us to his farm, and we stayed with him for about 3 weeks. And he was a complete stranger. So yeah, a lot of this project had been a complete leap of faith. And I think we were very blessed. And
the Punjabis as well, isn't it, Benji?
Yeah, of course. I learned a lot there about kind of Punjabi culture and the way that people treat each other. But yeah, I mean, it was definitely, for sure, it was a project that was divinely led. Like, I have no doubt that there was something really divine about the way that the interviews were just falling into our laps, and everyone we met, had a new story, and every kind of like angle that we wanted to follow, like someone would appear who would take us to this next farmer's house. And it was just, yeah, there was definitely something divine about it. So that's why I really feel like I didn't do, like, this wasn't my doing, for sure. I was just following a path that had been like just set out for me.
Sure, listening to from an outsider's perspective, from what you've told me, and you're talking about led by the divine, Punjabi coconut, as you said, and the Kurdish girl backpacking across Punjab, making a documentary, staying at random people's houses, and the success of it. I think definitely, the work's gone in, and I think you've done a massive seva. And I think I've always said this, and I'll say it again, is that those that do seva, Maharaj, Guruji, Waheguru will always look after those people in whatever context they are doing seva. And you're talking about the safety of Punjab. We've heard so many stories since the Kisans have been in Delhi that the safety of the women there, how, because it was known as the rape capital of the world, and that's a fact. And now the safety that the women all feel there, since the Kasans and the Punjabis have been there. And there's a lot of people, obviously what we want to do today is highlight your work. And so the documentary, it talks about a few different things. So like you said, with Guru Pratap, his story was being a drug addict, getting through that, and then helping other drug addicts at the Hermitage Centre. We're talking about the farming issues. So what are the, without going into it, telling listeners too much, because we want everyone to watch it, what other topics are covered within the documentary?
So what's unique about Toxification is that it connects three of the, what we feel are the main issues in Punjab right now. So it's toxification of the land, mind and body. So the toxification of the land refers to overuse of agricultural chemicals, all of the issues that come with the way that farming is done in Punjab at the moment. The toxification of the body is to do with drug abuse, and the toxification of the mind is the reasons behind farmer suicide, the kind of mental health aspect of it, any kind of stresses, loans, things like that. So what's unique about Toxification is it brings the three together, and for us that was really important, because you know, the farming issue is not just about any one of these issues. It's got to be a kind of holistic film, and that was something that we felt really strongly about when we started researching, and when we got there, kind of like confirmed our suspicions that these issues all rely on each other to be you know, prominent and challenging.
And who chose that title? Because you know, it's a brilliant title. How did that come about?
So that title came about while we were in Punjab. So while we were at this, while we were staying with this farmer that I had found on Facebook, I can't remember how it came about. It might have been Lever that came up with it. But I remember, yeah, we decided on it, and it was Diwali that day.
Okay.
And so, yeah, the whole house was kind of like lit up, and we decided on Toxification. So,
it's a brilliant name. And Benji, you've just said it there, to quote yourself, is that, you know, the toxification of Punjab affects everyone. And there's a massive kind of connotation with people saying, no, it only affects the Jats and the Jat diaspora, who are landowners. And yourself, you know, you don't come from a particular Jat background, but you were a young girl. You've seen the problems of Punjab, the suicides and everything else, and the toxification, like you said, and you were inspired to do this. And along the way, did caste ever come up for you?
no, not for me. I mean, like, in terms of my background, I didn't even know what my caste was until like my kind of mid-20s. So yeah, it's never been something that has been spoken about within my family, and it's not something that we ever kind of experienced while we were there. I think one thing that I did notice, although my understanding and knowledge of the caste system is really, really minimal, what I did notice was that I had thought that Jats were supposed to be like very rich and, you know, all of that kind of thing. And when I got there and saw the farmers, I realized that many of them are, you know, that stereotype is definitely doesn't ring true for all farmers.
And you just, like, you know, I'm a kind of guy that I've always thought that I've known about Punjab, I know about the social injustice and stuff, but after watching this documentary, it just opened my eyes even more. I mean, it just feels that, you know, they're getting attacked on all different angles. And just from here, being Punjabis living abroad, I think one of the things I took away from the documentary is, how can I help? How can I help our Punjabis in Punjab prosper and not go through this problem of, you know, the toxification, like you said, of the mind, the body and the soul? I mean, you've got organizations out there in Punjab like JSJ College, for helping with the families who have farmers who, you know, unfortunately committed suicide due to debt. And then you've got your Hermitage Institute as well, doing a brilliant job with, I think, educating the Punjabis and helping with the drug addiction as well. So just from being there and you connecting with the people in those institutes, what would you suggest is the best way we can help?
Yeah, it's a really tough one, and it can feel really kind of disempowering to be here and to, you know, not feel able or like it's possible to have any impact here. So my advice is look into and do some research on where your food is coming from and see if there are any changes that can be made there. And it's not possible for everyone, but just having a think about whether it's possible to buy from different sources or to go organic or anything like that. I think we do play a role in this because we all eat food. And so are there ways that we can source our food which might benefit farmers all over the world a little bit more? So that's one thing.
You just touched on organic there. Like, do we have like a rough, has anybody made a rough figure or a rough cost of what it would cost the average Punjabi farmer to change to organic farming from using all these pesticides? Like, I remember that in that one clip, there's the uncle pulls out 13 different dwaiyan to use that on his fossil and on his sprayer. Yeah, sprayer they call them. I mean, that just looking at that just didn't look healthy, did it? So
no.
Is there anyone out there who has come up with the information of how much it would actually cost a Punjabi farmer to change to organic farming?
Yeah, it's quite complex. I don't know if there is a kind of statistic, because I suppose it depends on what you grow, when you grow it, all of that kind of thing, how much it's bought for. But in terms of going organic, it's really challenging. So there is a period of up to 7 years where your land is kind of detoxifying itself from all of the chemicals, and it's likely to be very dry and not have a lot of the like things like nitrogen will probably be depleted from the soil. So the soil will be not very good quality, and it will likely take about 7 years or less for that soil quality to improve. And it also will take about 7 years for the chemicals to kind of be removed from the soil. So for 7 years, you might be growing organically, but you can't certify your land as organic because there are still chemicals within your soil. So imagine a farmer who is who's got much less yield due to not using chemicals, but they're also not able to sell at organic prices. So there's going to be kind of like 4 to 7 years where these farmers are going to really struggle financially to make ends meet. And I mean, I'm really good friends with Gurpreet from Saving Punjab, who I know has been on this show.
Yeah.
And we're kind of looking into lots of different things that might be able to save Punjab. And so I think it has to be a long-term project. And definitely a shout out to the My Bin survey. So anyone with friends and family in Punjab, look into sending the My Bin survey to them, because it's important that we understand which issues are happening where, so that a solution can be tailored to each area.
We had Gurpreet Singh on the show, but that survey can be done at his website, I believe.
Yeah.
Punjab.com. He again highlighted a lot of stuff. Benji, I was just listening to, I was just again recapping on the actual documentary, and I heard something very, very, for me, it was very heartbreaking. At the end, right towards the end, they asked the farmer, they asked him, would you want your kids doing this? He said no. He goes, the very last thing I want my kids doing is being farmers. And for me, I'll be honest, I've traced my family back to 7 generations, and it's 7 generations of farming. My dad farmed before he came to this country, so I'm the only one effectively that hasn't really carried on that tradition, but it's in the blood. But to hear that a farmer who's again come from a long lineage of farmers to say basically the equivalent of what he said was it's a mug's game, and that was so heartbreaking, because our culture, some aspects of our religion is built on the back of farming. And would you say that's the case for small farmers, big farmers? In terms of small and big, I mean acreage, or would you say generally, that is where it's going? It is a very difficult game, and it's better if we come out of this.
Yeah, so every farmer we spoke to said that they were educating their children because they didn't want them to work on the fields or in the farm. That was true across the board, whether they were large scale or small scale farmers. In terms of kind of my views, I think it would be a real shame if Punjabi people were no longer working on the land. yeah, I mean, time will tell what will happen, whether there will be laborers from other states kind of running farming in Punjab, or what will happen. I don't really know. But I mean, yeah, it's a huge shame. It would be really lovely to see Punjabi farmers sending their kids to study agriculture at university and then bringing home all of that knowledge in order to improve farming.
Sorry, Benji, just touching on that topic there, where you said, are we going to have external, laborers coming in and working the farms, or owning the land and stuff? We've already got that problem at the minute in Punjab, where the workers are the ones who are working the land, and we're over here, so they're working out land with us reaping all the rewards for it. So when people are going back after so many years, they find that these workers have actually done the qabja on the land.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, that's the case in a lot of states. In Sangrur, where we were, so when we went in October, it was harvest time, and what had happened was there had been one rainfall which had happened 1 week later than it was kind of meant to, and that meant that they couldn't use combine harvesters because the ground was too wet and soft. So there were huge fields, and everyone, you'd kind of like drive, because the family that we were staying with had given us like a couple of cars to kind of drive around in, and we were driving around, and on either side of the road there were people thrashing wheat by hand. And that's like, I mean, if you imagine, probably you could do a whole like field in a day in a combine harvester, and if you are to cut each kind of bunch of rice or wheat and thrash it yourself on an oil drum, that's gonna take, like, I don't know, a couple of weeks longer than doing it for a day. And so that kind of thing, you are going to need to hire laborers, because it's really difficult to do that yourself, and it's tough when you're reliant on nature.
Definitely.
The documentary highlights quite a few key things, some of which I guess are around the self-infliction of the negative things that are going on in Punjab. So the workers getting addicted to drugs. Some of things, as you've described, are kind of natural causes, bad weather and that kind of thing. But also, I think it's important to mention here is the water supply of Punjab, which has been diverted for quite a few decades now. And it was one of the key reasons why the Dharm Yudh Morcha was actually started. And Sant Jarnail Singh Ji is one of the main reasons why the Dharm Yudh Morcha was around, was actually for Punjab to get its water back. So I guess my question to you is, Benji, is in learning all of these kind of impacts on agriculture, did this kind of spur you to kind of lead into more research between the war of the state against Punjab and the kind of Sikh agitation as a whole?
Yeah, I think my views on this have changed quite a lot. So when we went out to film, I hadn't, I don't know, it wasn't really on my agenda to be interested in these kind of political issues, but I want to keep that separate from the film, because we've purposefully created a film which is as neutral as possible. But in terms of like my own views, one of the things is that, yes, so it's regrettable that the water has been diverted from Punjab. That's a really kind of difficult position to be in. But what's really interesting is that we as Punjabis can actually make huge changes in ourselves. So even with the water being diverted, so for instance, as you will have heard in the film, in order to farm with chemicals, you need to use a lot more water. So that, in addition to the fact that only really rice and wheat are grown in Punjab, rice especially is a very thirsty crop. And so we're using up a lot more water than we used to when we used to grow lots of different crops. So there are lots of things that we as Punjabis can do to kind of mitigate the effects of, I suppose, the government's kind of their effects on Punjab. I think there's a lot we can do ourselves, and my personal view is that we, as Sikhs and as Punjabis, there have been lots and lots of moments in history when we were not supported by the kind of governments or whoever was ruling the lands at those times. And so for me, on a personal level, I believe that you know,
You should
we never kind of like looked to the government to support us then, or maybe we did, but it, you know, there was some sense of being able to bring ourselves out of challenge, or being able to be empowered enough to make changes, or, you know, deciding to make decisions to support ourselves. And so now I also feel the same way, and I feel that although the situation is challenging and not everyone is supporting us, there are ways that we can support ourselves and be empowered once again. So this is not kind of the first time that we've been disempowered as Punjabis, and I don't see why I don't see why we have to kind of like expect the government to save us, because in the past that's not been the case.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I don't think Punjabis or Sikhs are used to government savior complex, as it were. We've always taken what was ours and
Yeah.
with some sort of autonomy. So yeah, that's really interesting. So as per your research, so the 3 bills that are being proposed now, how would you kind of,
how much of an effect do they have? Yeah, what's the effect of those in your research and in your understanding, having spent a lot of time on ground level there? How much of a big impact will they have on agriculture and farming in Punjab?
Yeah, 2 things. Firstly, agriculture has been an industry in Punjab which has been struggling for a long time. So when we went to the Mandi, we understood that firstly, minimum support price is not always kind of like adhered to. That, I mean, to be honest, we had never, when we went to film, no one mentioned minimum support price. So clearly it's not something that is, you know, a lifeline for people. It's not something that's so important that they felt they should mention it. No one mentioned it in any of the interviews. So I think minimum support price is not currently a phenomenon which is kind of used by everyone. So that's the first thing. And then secondly, I think the 3 agricultural bills will probably affect small scale farmers. We don't know, obviously, we don't know what's going to happen. But yeah, from my personal view, it looks like and it sounds like they're going to make small scale farmers' livelihoods much more challenging. We don't know that for sure. And I know that different people have different views on that based on their own research. I think time will tell, but I know that the situation was not perfect to begin with. And I know that a lot of the issues that were there during toxification are still there now. Some of them are worse, some of them are, you know, the same. And I think, yeah, time will tell. We'll see.
And you know, you've said some amazing things there, and I'm sure it's going to be a lot of inspiration for a lot of people. So what I want to ask you is, to a young person, let's say a young female who maybe isn't necessarily in touch with their culture, who has been educated on the Kisan movement and feels that pain and feels they want to do something. When you were 23 years old, you took up a challenge and you delivered on that challenge, and it's been a huge success. But what would you say to a young person who is feeling, let's say a young female, similar age to yourself, who's in your position now? What would you say to them would be a good seva or something that could contribute to the community as your work has done?
I think the advice I would give would just be to follow your heart, really. This has never felt like seva, because I've genuinely enjoyed every minute, every email I have sent, you know, every minute that I've worked on this project. I have done it in complete joy, and I feel so grateful to have been given this like amazing seva that I've absolutely loved. But yeah, so my advice would be just follow your heart, and whatever gives you that spark or brings you joy, or, you know, whatever you really want to do, just make it happen. It can be very difficult at the beginning of a project to make it a reality, but you know, it's up to us at the end of the day to bring something to fruition, because no one else is going to kind of do it for you. So, you know, in a sense, it's kind of like feel that responsibility to do it, because no one else will.
And you've said it yourself, this is something that you did, but recently, and I sent various videos in my family WhatsApp group, and one of my younger cousin sisters, who's well educated, but she hasn't necessarily been too close to her roots in the past. And what she felt that systematically, as Baji had said earlier, that we're being in a way targeted and oppressed. And around the 1980s, when the Sikhs of Punjab felt that the government was oppressing them and the Sikh way of life, a lot of people who were not Girstari, who do not have their hair, they all wore the stars as a form of protest. Is that you can't bully us, you can't force us, you can't dictate to us our way of life. And as a form of protest, a lot of people that didn't actually have their gears, they kept their hair. And bringing it back to what my cousin sister did, she felt then now is that they're trying to attack our culture in a way. And she has took online Punjabi classes, speaking, understanding, reading and writing. So I would say to all the people out there is, all the youngsters, that if you can't speak it, understand it, read it or write it, that is a massive thing that you can do, is continue our culture by simply doing that.
I agree. I think if we listen to the protests on the ground now in Delhi, everybody is viewing this, the 3 bills and the farming crisis, the agricultural crisis, they're describing it as an attack on Punjabiyat the Honste, on the existence of Punjabiyat, on the existence of our culture, of our language. We were talking about Green Revolution, not to divert off too much, but Punjabi Suba was happening at the same time. 1955, Akal Takht Darbar Sahib was actually invaded by the police because there was mass agitation for kind of Punjabi to be the main language in Punjab. So I think that's spot on by these. I think this should bring us back to our roots. This kind of threat or this kind of attack should bring us back onto our roots.
And Benji, what can we expect for all the fans of Toxification? What can we expect next from Ramit Kaur?
I plan to make more work similar to this. So there are a lot of issues that we couldn't fit into Toxification. We uncovered a lot in our interviews about cancer rates in Punjab. That just didn't fit into the film. There just wasn't enough space. So there's a lot more to be done, and I hope to continue going to Punjab and making more work like this. It's a passion for me for sure. So, and I do feel the responsibility to kind of put my skills to good use and make sure that whoever is telling these stories of Punjab is Punjabi and has some connection to the land.
Definitely. Just to finish, Benji, for all those people that haven't yet seen it, where can they watch it? And is it just purely for English listeners? Is it for Punjabi listeners? Is it a mixture? If you could just let all the listeners know where it's available and what is the kind of target audience for it.
Yeah, so it's available in the UK and US on Amazon Prime Video. Anywhere outside of that, it's available on Nishani Plus, which is a new platform for Sikh-related content. So we always hoped that the film would be watched by literally everyone. It was never meant to be like a film just for Sikhs or Punjabis. So our hope is that everyone watches it. It's not just for Punjabis, it's not just for Sikhs. So please, if you watch it, if you like it, share it with friends, Sikh and non-Sikh friends. You can follow us on social media at Toxification Doc, which is DOC for documentary. Please share, spread the word so that we can get as many people as possible watching this film.
Definitely. You're saying it's for the wider community, and anyone involved in agriculture anywhere in the world, they'll get a good insight. And like we said earlier on in the show, is anyone that's eating has a connection with the farmer, because that food all comes from somewhere. And so everyone has a connection in one way or another to a farmer. And this documentary highlights that. I can only say to all the listeners, we're not here, we don't get any kind of, like yourself, you're voluntary, we're voluntary, there's no financial reward here, but all I can just say to all the listeners is, honestly, go and watch his documentary. It's absolutely brilliant. Ramit, you've been an inspiration to a lot of people, especially to us. We're big fans of your work, and we hope to see more from you in the future. Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh.